All right, so we are now live. It's actually a first webinar of Heficed. So thank you very much, guys, for joining us. And today we're going to talk about IP lease, the new normal. And we're going to have a discussion about risks and benefits. And also, you're gonna find our recording available in YouTube after our webinar is over. So let me introduce myself. My name is Vincentas Grinius. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Heficed. And I've been doing this since 2008. And we have evolved, from the small hosting company into something that could help for the community to solve an internet problems. So let me pass the introduction to Christian and then the other guys.
Christian. Absolutely. Thank you, Vincentas, for having me on today. My name is Christian Dawson, and I'm Executive Director of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. Oh, I'm hearing myself. You hear me okay?
Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm Executive Director of the Internet Infrastructure Coalition. We're a trade association made up of companies like Heficed. And we basically are all together in a group in order to speak with a singular voice on issues that make sure that the internet and the companies that serve people survive and thrive. So we're interested in making sure that this industry can grow. So I'm here to talk about the IPv4 issue. Actually, it's not even an issue that I2 Coalition directly works on. So this is an issue for me that I'm speaking in a personal capacity on, but it's an area in which I find it very important to talk about, because when it comes to making sure that there's sufficient IPv4 allocations available to people trying to do good things to push the internet forward, that's something that we should be working on.
Right, Tobias.
Yeah, hello. My name is Tobias Knecht. I am the founder of Abusix, and we're coming from a little bit a different angle. We're a security vendor having different products, and our main goal is to help ISPs and hosting companies such as Heficed and others, and ISPs and other internet stakeholders in any way to keep their networks clean and keep compromised hosts out of their infrastructure. This is done by a lot of data collection from different sources and also partners, and then really figuring out how can we tackle the abusive behavior of certain people within networks. Yeah, an interesting piece about IPv4 for us is, of course, how can we keep the reputation of IPv4 addresses up? How can we help companies to do that? And there's also a lot of work behind the scenes within RIPE and other places that I'm engaged in as a chair for the anti-abuse working group. But that's the interesting piece of for us today.
Aistis.
Hey all, my name is Aistis Zenkevicius, and I'm director of R&D at Heficed. My focus here for a while has been scaling the cloud infrastructure, but slowly shifted towards network product development and research. So these days I read a lot and architect our new IP address market, which we'll talk about.
Sounds good. Thank you very much, guys, for the introduction. So I'm gonna kick off with my presentation. We actually done, let's put it this way, a research of the last 5 years of IP transfers. So I'm gonna deep dive into that shortly. But before that, I would like to introduce who's actually Heficed is. So our main focus for the company is IPv4 and IPv6 management, network engineering and infrastructure. We do business since 2008. We are a UK-based company with 50+ people team. We are self-funded business with a global customer base and 9 infrastructure locations. So now talking about my mentioned research, before that, we all know that IP addresses, IPv4 addresses, their prices are going up. And what we have actually saw that every year it goes up from 25 to 30%. And when we actually thought, okay, so who is actually selling and who is buying the IP addresses? And Aistis made a big data database where we actually saw an interesting picture where, let's put it this way, the biggest pie of who's buying the IP addresses belongs to hyperscalers, telcos, IP providers, and the majority of them actually fits into the 93% of the pie. If we would talk about the smallest one, so we have data centers and hosting guys. Same covers with another piece of pie, which is 1.76%. And then 5% we have data centers and ISPs. So what we actually learned from this research that around 350 million IP addresses been sold per 5 years. And this actually is an interesting thing, because we see that Amazon alone bought 20 million IP addresses last year. So it's you know, it's the material that we should think of. And from actually Jeff Huston, the APNIC data analyst, reports out of 4.3 billion IP addresses, there are still 800 million of them unused but allocated to the enterprises. So that means that we can have an ecosystem of the IP lease, and this is where we could share the resources without, you know, getting rid of the, let's say, you know, the allocation of the actual enterprise. And we see the opportunity here to actually, you know, bring the IP address market into, you know, from the gray area, because right now IP lease is completely a gray area in the market. And this is where, you know, the biggest abuse and spam issues occur. And this is where, you know, we could make things right. But of course, there are a lot of obstacles, and there are a lot of challenges that we need to think of. And well, most of them are actually legal issues. You know, there are a lot of also non-standard things, like there is no standard ROI API, or there is no API at all in some of them. When you have, of course, the IP shortage, which does not help, you know, and the IP prices also are increasing. We actually are very big lovers of RPKI, and we think that LOA is just another, you know, bureaucracy layer which needs to be removed. So we think that this is an obstacle as well. Also, another thing is IP hijacking, and Tobias knows about it a lot. And of course, the most important one, but you know, not the least, is actually abuse and spam. So we think that, you know, creating this type of ecosystem would actually help us to, you know, reduce abuse and spam, and actually make the environment much better for the whole internet community. And the technical specifications that we, you know, already have in place in Heficed platform, gonna give a word to Aistis to actually tell more about the technical things. And after that, I'm gonna present you some interesting thing after Aistis' presentation. So Aistis, please.
Okay, let's hope you can hear me well. I'll just do a present slides. Second. My slides are gone again. Okay. 1 second. This is the first time we're using the service, so still computer learning curve. Anyway, so I'll talk about IP address markets, a platform that we created to tackle certain problems and find new ways of solving our issues. So it grew out of necessity because our own customers needed more IPs. And for a while, we thought, okay, we'll have it to some degree just for us. But then later on, we went with Vincentas around the globe. And during one of our brainstorming sessions, we thought, hey, why not make it public? Why not make it bigger? Why not take it outside just us, but make it useful for everybody around the globe? So we are bringing supply and demand together, right, under a single roof. Lessors are looking for a no-fuss way to list their resources and receive payouts while having peace of mind that the resources being added won't get blacklisted or otherwise compromise their reputation. While leases are looking for a one-stop shop for all their IP needs, with as much variety to choose from, like a specific registrar, right? Afrinic, Apnic, whatever. So Heficed IP address market is great because our terms of service and cost structure is easy to understand. There are no hundreds of pages of hidden rules and whatnot. We have a dedicated team which deals with abuse reports and assists both lessors and lessees in tackling the issues. We have a dedicated sales team with 10 years of experience working with more than one IP. We also have deep expertise in selling. They also have a deep expertise in selling infrastructure solutions and architecting them. And perhaps most importantly, the platform development is 100% in-house, built here with us. And we also have our perfect network engineering team, where we only just began to grasp the potential, which we can translate later on into a platform. And then what about IPv6? So in regards to it, we are very much supportive, and this reflects in our development roadmap. We are here to ease the transition, which from the looks of it might take another 10 years or so. The 20 years passed already. I predict another 10 or so. And the reason why is that from the looks of it, we plateaued at roughly 30% development worldwide. That's according to Google's reachability graphs and data, and a letter S, if you may, right? It looked like it took off very slowly, then had a very good run, and now it's plateaued again. And engineers and academics are trying to understand what are the reasons behind it, and still we'll see. But for now, it seems to be there. So while we get to at least 80% critical, we are here to help in a ways that we think are reasonable and not explored before this platform. So I'll quickly run through the main features from the lessors and lessees perspective, so you just can get an understanding on what it is about. So from the lessors perspective, we support adding subnets to the marketplace and authorizing the use of them via LOA and ROA that Vincentas already mentioned. So for those who don't know, LOA is the old school method of writing a letter of authorization, perhaps a PDF, signing it, and sending to us and saying, hey, we allow you to announce specific block on your AS number. The ROA is route object authorization, which is a new method of cryptographically signing and verifying such authorizations. The good news about ROA is that this path is fully automated in our platform. So if you go and create route origin authorization, which allows our AS member to announce a specific subnet, it will go right away without human intervention, which saves a bunch of time for everybody, and also allows for automation down the line for our upstreams and so on. And it also gives more direct control. We also provide subnet setup options while adding the subnet into the marketplace. So we ask whether the lessor allows a further subnet reassignment. This is something new that we just launched. So as an example, if you trust us enough that you allow us to reissue LOAs further for our clients, there's an option to set that. Then we have a minimum and maximum split sizes where you can say perhaps you don't want to split the subnet into smaller pieces and you just want to sell it as is. For example, you put 1,000 IPs and you don't want to carve them further. Or you can say, I'm okay from 256 IPs to 1,000. So you have this flexibility here. Then, of course, you set the expiration date. For how long the subnet is valid in this marketplace, a year, 2 or 3 or so. And you have a flexible pricing setup options, whether you can set up per subnet split size, specific price that you want to get that. Now, a bit of background on the backend. So the whole subnet validation is fully automated, and it runs on several steps. Some steps while doing the initial addition to the marketplace. The others are after it's already, let's call it in production. So we do the BGP management, we do RADB updates, we have integration with them. We monitor our upstreams, whether we started passing the prefix in question. So only then we put it into a public marketplace. Before that, it keeps being silent. We monitor if abuse contact is correct, and that's very important for us because we do monitor abuse and we handle that. We do all the reverse DNS checks and so on. And quite important, we also monitor the whole subnet during its lifetime, whether any part of it or the whole of it begins to be announced somewhere else on the internet, right? So perhaps somebody hijacked it, or perhaps there is another issue. So we monitor all that. From the management standpoint, you get a dashboard with all the main info that you need. You have ability to modify the parameters that you set initially after it's already in being listed, maybe change some pricing, maybe disable some features. You can temporarily hide it from marketplace. You do have a payouts management where you can set up your bank details, so PayPal and whatnot. And then you get the balance a payout log, which is a graphical and text representation on what's happening, right? Somebody perhaps bought a piece of your subnet, then somebody returned, and so on. So you get to see all the dynamics. Now, from the leasee's perspective, the guys who need IPs, right? We have a very flexible search and order form. We have a real-time IP address market statistics. So you go there, you can see subnets by size, how many of them are on the market, what's the average price, and so on. Then the subnet search itself is pretty cool in a way that you not only specify the mask that you are after, but you can search by geolocation, by data center location, if it's smaller than /24, by registrar, pricing, minimum, maximum, or even octets, right? For that matter. Maybe I like a nice IP address, so I can just type in, 88.88. Maybe I need that for, I don't know, like a car number, license plate. And we do provide an on-demand G information from the leading providers. Currently 3 will be 4. We do have a make an offer feature. currently only for our own resources, but soon to be, as I'll mention later, soon to be implemented for everybody, which is, we think it's cool, right? Since you have some kind of defined pricing, but maybe I have a good deal, right? Maybe I have a good offer, so I can do that. Then we have a time-limited checkout where you have something like 10 minutes to make up your mind, because we can't indefinitely reserve them, nor we can, otherwise do the thing. So it's time-limited checkout. And obviously, flexible payment options. We support the plethora of methods from cryptocurrency to whatever. Now, the IPAM is a central piece, IP address management dashboard. It's a one-stop management place for all of your IP resources, be it from the marketplace, which you order, be it your own, which you can bring your own using the feature of bring your own IPs. And you can readily assign them to Heficed infrastructure. You can split them into smaller pieces. We provide all the wizards and so on. And the cool thing about it is within the Heficed infrastructure, we can migrate them right away. It happens literally in seconds. So let's say one day I have a subnet in Frankfurt, and perhaps the other day I want to move it to Chicago for any reason. So you can do that with our platform, granted for the subnets that are big enough to do that. So currently limited by the BGP, needs to be /24, 256 IPs or bigger. Now, what's in the development pipeline? So quite a lot, and there's more. I just listed a couple of main things. So firstly, integration with Abusix. We want to provide more detailed information in our terminal, the client area that we call terminal, to our customers, whether their IPs that they use are being for any reason in a botnet, or maybe somebody received a complaint that it is in doing phishing, email sending, and so on. There are many multitudes of times where customers are not even aware that something happened with their server and it's being hacked or whatnot. So we think that providing additional crucial information might help here. We'll also integrate an IP reputation scanner for lessors. So you get to, before we list the subnet in the marketplace, we'll do a full scan on over 80 blacklists, 80, in order to figure if it's a good reputation, if it's clean enough, because we say that what you put in, you'll get back in the same state, right? It will not get worse or anyways. So to that effect, we need to make sure that it's transparent and lessors know what we are adding, and they'll also have ability to schedule scans being weekly or perhaps monthly and get reports on that. The biggest probably feature of all of those here, although all of them are big, is subnet reassignment. To take away IP in brackets type. Subnet reassignment to outside Heficed infrastructure. And this is important, right? Although we have our infrastructure and it's in multiple places around the globe, there are reasons why you might want to move to perhaps a hyperscaler or somebody else. So we'll provide a no-fuss, easy-to-use interface to perform that. Basically, reassignment to our AS number. And this Doku thing that I wrote here is how we call Vincentas, the questionnaire.
FAQ?
No, it's like
knowledge base. Knowledge base.
No. It's like a questionnaire on how you're gonna use those IPs.
Questionnaire on how we're gonna use those IPs.
Yeah. So, long story short, before you can move IPs anywhere outside in our infrastructure.
KYC.
Well, it's a
KYC.
Know your customer.
We call it KYC. You know, like a banks have know your customer process. So we thought that it would be cool actually to integrate a KYC, because for us, it's very important so that leaser would understand who will gonna lease those IP addresses. And I see actually guys in our current webinar, asking those similar questions. So we're gonna answer them shortly. But again, KYC is very important, and we think that it should be accountable. And our, let's say, big dream is to actually show as much information as possible to actually for the leasers, so that they would understand the leases of their IP space.
Yeah, and after all, we need to understand, for example, if there is any abuse expected, right? Are we gonna run a mail server, right? And if we do, then we need to know that we have a proper abuse department that will handle that, or at least a contact that we can deal with our. Anyhow, so that's big, and that's coming very soon. Then we'll have advanced DNS delegation control, which is actually needed if we want to lease parts of /16s or any other big blocks, because you either set DNS delegation on the whole /16, which sometimes is not feasible, or you'll need to do tricks. So we'll provide means to perform certain forwards. I don't remember the RFC number, but there's that. We'll do automated ROA control, and by that we mean that we'll be able to issue those route object certificates automatically. The backend is already pretty much tested, so that's going to be another nail to the coffin of LOA, let's put it this way. And here we have IPv6 support. So at the current state, IP address market is IPv4 only, but surely we'll add IPv6. The rest of the infrastructure is already fully IPv6 enabled. It's just that you cannot list or lease IPv6 resources. BGP session management, you'll be able to set up a private session with us, announce your own ASN, and do things like that. And then quite a big and important piece for IP leases is Geo and the Whois object update functionality. And this is something Vincentas mentioned, that currently there is no single overlay API which will allow you to deal with all the registrars in the world. So we plan on making something like that will allow us to do that. And as I mentioned earlier, make an offer for marketplace IPs feature. So this is pretty much it from the technical standpoint of IP address market. And you can register at heficed.com, have an account, and take a look at that. So with this, I'm done.
Thank you, Aistis. So before we jump into a discussion with our dear friends, I would like to actually present, how the IP address, the current Heficed IP address market, will going to be rebranded. And off we go. The presentation is opening, and here we go. So we actually thought that it would be a cool name to call the IP address market as IPXO. And that actually rephrases into Internet Protocol Exchange Organization. So, as current goals, our goals will gonna be carried on to IPXO with, engaging the monetization of the IP space for leasers. To protect the IP space that is going to be in the actual IPXO, developing the anti-hijacking things, reducing the abuse and spam, and keeping the IP addresses clean. Also for the leasees, we want to help on the capital and investment savings, which the IP prices are going up drastically. And very important one is to create the accountable ecosystem for the IP lease. So these are the goals that we actually would like to would like to develop and reach them, of course. So now I would actually would like to invite to wider discussion, and Christian, maybe you could give us some inputs on the policies and how the actual internet community could be developed to create the accountable and transparent IP lease market.
Happy to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, happy to do so. And I'll start again by reiterating that when it comes to IPv4 leasing policy, it's not something that I2 Coalitions has dealt with. So I'm speaking in my own personal capacity, but the first thing that I want to do is I want to explain to people why I think this is so exciting. And then I can give you guys an overview of where things stand right now with IPv4 leasing policies. Then we can talk about what can potentially be done to change those policies. And finally, I can highlight some of the areas in which the kinds of things that you're announcing today with IPXO can have a direct reflection on making sure that those policies modernize. I mean, the big picture of why I think this is really cool is because the reason that I got into the situation where we created this trade association to try and make sure that the internet survives and thrives is because what we do in enabling people at the small business level is extremely important. The whole digital economies around the world are completely driven by what it is we do in the infrastructure market, and the infrastructure market needs IPv4 space in order to help people enable their dreams. I mean, right now we're seeing with the pandemic going around the globe, we're seeing people like digitize faster than ever. You know, we're seeing people come up with creative solutions that they've got to go out there and put out there into the world to do things digitally that they were doing face to face before, and they can't do it anymore. I mean, heck, some of the solutions are based on contact tracing. The idea that we would limit those things because there's not enough IPv4 space to get those things done is crazy to me. And so making sure that we solve for those constraints is very important, especially at the small business level. People talk about IPv6 as a solution. Aistis, you brought up IPv6 as something that you saw as an S-curve, and it was tracking to not going very, very far along. I mean, the truth is that most of the major huge networks have not done the IPv6 transition because they've got huge stockpiles of IPv4. There's a lot of cost to them and there's not a lot of benefit. And so because they've got the problem solved, you know, why are they going to make it so that the entire system, which actually needs to be upgraded in order to support IPv6, why would they help the whole system transition? So it's not happening. And because it's not happening, we all still need to rely upon IPv4 for at least the interim. And the people that do tend to miss out are the small businesses. So that's why it's really a concern of mine. When we are talking about how this works, I think that it's important for people to understand that IPs are delegated by regional internet registries, are called RIRs. There are RIRs across the globe. We had mentioned in this Aaron, which does IP distribution for North America. We have mentioned RIPE, which does IP distribution for Europe. Those are examples of RIRs. So that's where people get their IPs. And there is a general policy, whether it's enforced or not, that prohibits subleasing. Those policies are largely outdated, and they're based on the concept that IPv4 address space isn't property, and so it can't be subleased at a premium. What they say is that you're supposed to only have what you use, and then you're supposed to give back anything you're not using to the RIRs so that they can give it to someone else. However, because of this scarcity issue, along with high demand, everybody's hanging on to their IPs as much as they can. And a leasing market exists. It simply does. It's an extremely necessary and important part of how people get IPs. It's just a fact of life. You have a resource that is scarce. You don't want to give it back. You want to be able to use that to meet the usage criteria. And so subleasing in an unregulated way exists in an open market. but that means that there's a ton of problems. It means that there's excessive price gouging, and it means that there isn't a lot of regulation when it comes to dealing with abuse. So the current status is that the RIRs are saying that subleasing is not allowed, but subleasing is happening, and it's happening in a way that in some situations is detrimental to the health of the internet ecosystem. So it's something that needs to change. We've spent some time talking to the RIRs, which honestly is a multi-stakeholder community. So it's made up of people like you and me that go there and engage. It is not an elected body of people on high. It's people like you and me who decide that they want to go and participate in that process, and they have the internet's best interest at heart. And they take a look at the situation, and there are some ways in which they're very amenable to change, which is good. I would say that in ongoing dialogues over time, there are potential ways of getting to a structure that could mirror AppNext's national or local internet registries model that will allow us to get to a path where in the future IP leasing is necessary. However, the RIRs don't want to manage leasing contracts or registration information at the leasing level. And so the RIR's main concern is how it is they're going to deal with that without having to manage that process themselves. And of course, their main concern is with who is accuracy and mitigating abuse and spam. They're concerned about issues of the rogue leasing market as it is today. And they're interested in talking to organizations that are exploring how the community can tolerate leasing with mutually beneficial solutions that solve for the problem of everybody understanding that a leasing market does exist and finding ways to move it forward in ways that are responsible. And that's why I wanted to bring up IPXO, because I think that the IPv4 leasing solution that you're designing, that you're talking about conceptually in part, is designed to address that need in the market. The market that was created by a disorganized, untrustworthy, and unregulated IPv4 leasing market. But I mean, the fact is that organizations have a need to lease IPv4 space for a limited period of time, but they can't obtain transfers from RIRs right now. There are burdensome and complicated needs-based transfer policies. So the underground leasing market exists. It lacks accountability mechanisms. Abuse is rampant within these subleasing areas and often results in degraded or blacklisted IPv4 addresses. But the solution that you could create with this IPXO environment can address some of those safety and trust concerns and that are present in the underground subleasing market to ensure the integrity of IP address space. Some of the things that I'm particularly excited about is the possibility of managing the actual transfer of address blocks from one organization to another, managing the accuracy and contactability of registrant information, vetting the potential lessees like the KYC process you were talking about, your ability to establish strict leasing and acceptable use policies, to provide recourse for policy violations, including terminating the IPv4 address space while maintaining sort of financial lease obligations, and also taking responsibility for meeting regulations and ensuring sustainability and integrity of the address space. In an environment like that, organizations that have large IPv4 allocations who wouldn't otherwise be interested in permanently giving up their IP space, they might have been wary before of entering into an illegitimate subleasing market because of those trust and safety concerns, but they'd certainly be interested in participating in a legitimate, trustworthy market in order to monetize their IPv4 address space. So as you move forward, addressing the trust and safety concerns of the community and demonstrating the feasibility of a business solution which manages the operational concerns of the IPv4 address holders, that's what's going to make the RIRs take notice. And that's what's going to make them see that there is a path forward to solve some of the trust and safety concerns, find some accountability, not have to take responsibility for understanding where the leases come and go, but moving past the status quo that's still not working. And so I'm hopeful that as IPXO launches, one of the ways in which you can influence policy development that governs subleasing is simply as you guys set your own best practices, they could potentially become industry best practices through example and through the thought leadership that you guys are trying to provide with this system. That industry visibility is key to establishing trusted relationships with the large organizations that have IPv4 address space under management and the IP brokers that would put it on your systems. But the kinds of solutions that you've got here are the way that we can break through from a status quo that just isn't working and find a path forward on policy. Questions?
Right. Thank you very much, Christian. Very good insights. From the actual, we have quite a few questions on the actual abuse blacklists and, so I would like actually Tobias to, give some insights and let's say, the best practices for those things. And since we already work together, we kind of, trying to learn much more every day. And maybe you can give us, more insights on whatever, we could take, more things into consideration.
Sure. Happy to do so. So one of the things, and just one add on to what Christian just said. So if you have an IP owner or somebody that uses IP addresses and that does not care about any abusive behavior or security measurements, what do you think if you give these IP addresses to even more unknown people that where you have no visibility into? So it gets worse, especially if it's unregulated, and this is exactly what we're seeing on a daily basis. So for those that do not know Abusix, we have a big sensor network. We're getting a lot of data. We're seeing quite a big footprint about what abusive behavior is happening on the internet. A lot of stuff from a spam side, but a lot of stuff from also other things. So, and what happens is that we're seeing that IP reputation becomes more and more important, not only for sending email, but also for certain other services. Of course, we all talk about blacklisting because you can't deliver an email to Gmail or to any other service provider because they think your IP address is bad. But we have meanwhile also heard that IP address reputation is a problem for online banking. So if you go to a really, really shady hotel in the middle of nowhere and you use the hotel Wi-Fi and you go to your online banking, the chances that the online banking system tells you that you shouldn't do online banking with the IP that you're coming from is pretty high. So this is kind of, this reflects on quality of service in all different types of areas. So how are we going to get rid of it? We have this, or here within Abusix, we always say everybody leaks. So everybody will at one point in time have a problem. The more IP addresses you have, the more end users you have, the more WordPress machines you have in your data center, the more whatever you have in your data center, you will at one point in time leak. That's a given. All companies do. So the point, and this is where we think where the biggest benefit of what we're doing is coming in place is once you leak, you need to be able to react fast and do something. And we're taking this a little bit from a security perspective. If a security team of a big bank suddenly sees that one machine on the 15th floor is doing some really, really weird stuff, the security team, they have their protocols in place. They need to do whatever needs to be done to make sure that that machine is quarantined, that the machine is cleaned up, that there's research been done, and that everything goes its way to figure out what happened. And that needs to be that needs to be fast. And the same is if you're a big telco ISP, if you're a big network operator, if you have a big data center operations or whatever it is, if you see that within your infrastructure and your network, something is going wrong, you need to be fast and you need to analyze what went wrong, and you need to make sure that the problem is going to go away. And so what we and I have been working in this area for quite a while. I've built the abuse desks of big ISPs and telcos here in Europe. I have been consulting with a lot of companies in that regard. So the idea is, how are we going to be able to to do that process fast and automated, because it's not the nicest process to sit in front of a computer and read spam emails for the whole day. So you want to have some automation also from a speed perspective. What that does on top of that, and this is exactly where we love to work with companies like Heficed and work with other stakeholders, is that there's a lot of different stakeholders on the internet. We're talking ISPs, telco data center providers. We're talking enterprises. We're talking the small, tiny mom and pop shop places. But what we do not have at this point in time is kind of a connection in between. So we do not have the overlap between data exchange between enterprise and telcos. So if an IP address from the data center X is attacking a big bank, the big bank will not tell the ISP, hey, here's a problem, you need to take care about that, which then will reflect on the reputation. And the problem, what happens is that the security systems of the big bank will tell all the big vendors that this IP address is doing attacks at the moment. So you, as the owner or the user of the IP address, will run into those reputation problems, because suddenly all the big vendors in security are blacklisting your IP address and you haven't even heard about it. And so at that point in time, you always run into a wall. And at that point in time, the problem has already been there. And you, as the person that is using this IP address, you have then a hard time to go after all of those security vendors and cleaning up the mess that might have been able to be fixed within 3 minutes, 5 emails, 5 reports to the person that figures out, I installed a plugin on my WordPress and that was leaky, so I need to get rid of it. 5 minutes later, problem solved. Suddenly this person has to solve a problem or has to do 3 weeks of work to get everything cleaned up. And the problem is, you, as we always say with people, and I guess that's true, you can't hide from your reputation. So once your reputation is broken, your reputation will be broken for a while, because all the security vendors, they will keep a history. So we know that certain IP addresses 6 months ago did certain things, but maybe the IP address has been changed 15 times, or the owner has been changed 15 times in between. Nevertheless, we know that this IP address 6 months ago was used for certain stuff. So you can't hide. We're saving everything, so does everybody else. So the idea is that a reputation for IP addresses is not only based on what was the past and what did we see about the past, but also how did we see that the owner of the IP address reacted to the information about something as being wrong. If I know that I send an email to somebody or call somebody up and then it takes 15 days until they do anything, I know I most likely do not need to call them again, because it's not worth. But if I know that I send stuff to somebody that has a functioning abuse desk in place, where they do their work, where they react fast, where they get rid of the badness within their infrastructure, within their environment, I know that is a reputation benefit for them. And this is exactly where I like the idea, when we're doing IP, or when there's IP leasing going on and IPs change hands in a very, very fast manner, that we have at least somebody that is taking care about this abusive behavior and making sure that those type of things are going to be taken care of immediately. And when we're comparing this with the hyperscalers, as you call them, or as they're called, is they have exactly the same problem. They're leasing their IP addresses in a very, very fast manner, because meanwhile, setting up a VPS server takes 50 seconds. And then you delete it, and then the IP is available again, and then it will be used 3 minutes later, and maybe over the course of a day, those big cloud providers will give that IP address to 25 different people that have nothing to do with each other. And they have more or less exactly the same issue within their own environment. So even when we're not talking about IP leasing and we're going just from an IP perspective, we exactly have the same problem in those environments when we're talking about very, very fast changes of IPs. Mobile networks is another one. So as the world goes faster, and spinning up a machine in 50 seconds and deleting it 2 minutes later and spinning up another one and having 15 IP addresses over the course of a day, walking through the city and getting 25 different IP addresses just with my LTE contract, the faster this whole thing is going to change and the faster things are going to move, the faster we need to keep up in taking care about what's going to happen if abusive behavior is going to happen. And so that's where Abusix and where we specialized on is automating those processes, and making that as seamless as possible. And Heficed as a customer of ours in this regard, that they're using our platform for exactly this, and they're doing a great job in keeping the IP addresses and the networks and the data centers that they have up to speed and clean, and by that also keeping a reputation in shape, which we cannot say about a lot of other big companies out there in the internet. But this is one of the things that we all have to kind of push and work, and where also Christian comes in place with his organization to convince people to do the right thing and keep their stuff clean.
Exactly, and that's why we love to work with you, Tobias. Yeah, actually, spam and abuse topic is never ending, and you always have to find a mood for the creativity, how to actually protect the IP space constantly and every day. Because since we have millions of IP addresses under one platform, it's just a huge challenge, which we are actually trying to kind of maintain, and to maintain the IPs clean. So if somebody would say, well, my IP addresses will remain clean within the time when they will be listed in IP address market, all what we can say is that we are doing our best to maintain it. But every day, there are many things that popping up, and you have new challenges and new things that you need to learn, and you need to exercise, in terms of the development, in terms of the policies, and of course working as well with close partners like Tobias and Christian. So some interesting facts, actually, when Christian mentioned about the IPv6, so some interesting facts. Right now we have around 32% of IPv6 adoption globally. So that means that only 32% of the internet is visible over IPv6. And IPv6 was introduced in 1999. So we have what, 20 so years, and we still have 32%. So by reading actually latest article, I think from IRIN's data analyst, we have pointed out that we need at least 2 decades for IPv6 to not would be fully utilized, but a majority of the internet would be available over IPv6. So 2 decades is, I would say, in the internet is pretty long time, and I think that in today's internet, we definitely need to find the solutions how the IP lease and many other things could be accountable and could be more transparent. That's why we actually going to have a safer internet and better environment for even the business. And I think that the IP lease should not be driven by the non-profit organizations, because it comes down to the actual business decisions, and should the business buy IP addresses or should they lease the IP addresses, and it's all related and correlates within the business decisions. And I think that actually it's very interesting times we have today, because even the big ISPs in the US have large IPv4 allocations, And when I was in NANOC last year in Austin, I spoke with one of the largest ISPs in the US, and we said, you know, we have a dual stack network, IPv6 and IPv4, but since we actually running our cable TV, internet TV, we actually have it IPv6 native. And I said, so what do you do with, you know, your free IPv4 resources? So we gave to Amazon in exchange to cloud credits, because they host, you know, the whole content in Amazon. So this is IP lease, you know, it's happening, you know, and you can't deny it. You can't deny it. Right. So getting back to the actual you know, security issues, what are your recommendations, Tobias, in terms of, you know, how let's say leasers or the IP holders could protect their IP space better?
I think it depends a little bit on exactly what you're using them for. Of course, if you use email for email, you know, as an email service provider, don't do stupid things like buying lists. Don't spam people. Keep your records up. Use DKIM SPF and all the other DMARC stuff that's out there. I think it's the same when we're talking RPKI to avoid hijacking and all those kind of things from a very, very technical perspective. And I also put in a technical perspective, you know, run an abuse mailbox, be available for people that have a problem with your network to, you know, to receive reports, to receive messages. Because the worst thing that can happen, and this is maybe my personal objective or my personal thing, but if I send or if we send a report to an abuse desk and we get back that the abuse ad mailbox is full as an error code, that's usually not really a very good sign that that you're going to keep track on your network and that you're going to do a good job in keeping your stuff clean. Once you have all those basics set up, that who is up to date and all those kind of things, I think it depends also on the size that you are and a little bit about the volume. But in my opinion, abuse mailbox and abuse work is not a, you know, once a week Friday afternoon with the last beer on Friday to look into the abuse mailbox and see if something weird happened this week. That's not the way and how it should be treated. Because if you treat that, if you treat it that way, you should maybe treat your security mailbox and your security stuff that you do every day, maybe full-time with 25 people every day, treats that as a Friday afternoon thing and see what happens. And so I think you just need to be aware of what's going on. There's no need to, you know, to go super crazy and you know, if you're a small hosting company and you have a little bit IP space, there's no need that the phone rings all your system administrators out of the bed on a Sunday night just because you received a phishing complaint. But at least to take care about it on Monday morning. If you grow and you're going to go really, really big, and you're going to be a really big target, because the bigger the network, the bigger the pipes, the bigger the bandwidth, the bigger the effect for the bad guys is, then you need to step up your game and be capable of really being automated and really being in certain cases proactive and look into things in the right way. And one of the biggest things that I'm always telling people, especially when we have conversations with potential customers, is this is not rocket science. This is really, really, really not rocket science. It seems weird. You're receiving hundreds of thousands of emails depending on how big you are per day. You don't know where to start. At the end of the day, it's just simple, pragmatic work process and making sure that you have everything in place. That's what it is.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Actually, I see that we are running out of time. I would love actually to do this second part of webinar later on sometime, maybe on summer or maybe, you know, in autumn. Guys, thank you very much for your time. It was really a pleasure. Thank you very much for everyone who joined our webinar. And stay tuned, follow our news, and we're definitely gonna come back with a part 2. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, Christian. Thanks a lot, Tobias.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank
you
you.
very much. Thanks.